In film school, I'm told they teach you when filming a conversation between two people in close-up to stay on one side of the action and to make sure you film the actors facing opposite directions so when you edit it together it'll look like they're talking to each other. It's really not that hard to do.
Would you just listen to me? No, I won't listen to you. His father was a wife beater. I really don't care what you believe. Stop it.
Like most aspiring filmmakers, before you ever make a movie or anything, you want a production company like Amblin or something. So I came up with the name Suburbia Studios. I figured we'd be filming in the neighborhood. Why not call it Suburbia? I've never been a very good speller. I sound words out to spell them. So I sounded out Suburbia. To me, it sounded like S-E-B-U-R-B-I-A, and I wrote that down on something. My father saw it, and that Christmas, as a gift to me, had a wooden sign made for me. It was done with a wood burner. It said Suburbia Studio, Dave Hall. Of course, it was spelled just the way I had spelled it. And immediately someone saw it and said, "Oh, you spelled Suburbia wrong." I felt like an idiot, of course, and to avoid further embarrassment, I changed the name of the studio on the actual movies when we did the Chiron to the correct spelling. But that's why the logo you see, the actual sign that my dad gave me that I rendered down and use as an opening to some of these packages, is spelled differently than the way we actually spell it in the movies. But just because we had a production name didn't mean we had an actual studio. Suburbia Studios would form over a period of about 4 years, beginning in 1978 when I met Brian Brooks.
I'll never forget how David and I met. It was first day of 8th grade. We were in homeroom, and the homeroom teacher said, "You must have a locker partner, so pick somebody." And everybody rushed up and picked someone, and I saw David sitting there, so I walked up to him and I said, "Hey Steve, you want to be my locker partner?" And he said, "Sure, but my name's not Steve." So we started talking and found out we lived a couple of blocks from each other, and that's basically how it started.
Then in 1979, when I was a freshman at Paschal, I would meet David Whitley. Now move back over. So you always need to be if you're looking this way, you're always going to be on the right side of the screen, no matter what.
That's the right side of the screen. So it is. Yes, you're right. That means the left side of the camera.
Yeah.
That means the right side. My left.
All right, well, then back and forth from us. And then finally, in 1981, I would meet Chris Freeland.
I was in Carol Brown's 5th period class, and I think David was in the 6th period. There were these pictures of planets, and they were done with an airbrush, which was something that I had never seen before. They were really cool looking. They were on dark screens with stars and stuff, and there was this big planet. Every once in a while there'd be this new one being worked on in the back of the class, so finally I said something to Mrs. Brown about her. And she said that it's a guy in my next class. Why don't you stay? And he'll be in just a little bit. And David walks in, and Mrs. Brown looks at him, and she points at me and says, this guy's been looking for you." Which I don't know what she was talking about, looking for you. I simply asked about the paintings, but there was a very strange look on David's face, like, "My God, what do you want?"
And Chris, together with Whitley and Brian, would form the heart, the foundation of Suburbia Studios. Whitley could do art, he could do makeup, special effects. Brian was good at photography. Chris could do just about anything. He could run the camera, he could do sound. And these three people, along with Alan Hale, who would come in and out and provide valuable critical observations.
This is Dracula.
And those four people, along with myself, would form the brain trust of Suburbia Studios. Even though we had a sign and very talented people, we still didn't have an actual physical studio. But as it turned out, my father had built me a little room in the backyard. We called it my office. It was 12 by 12. It was sturdy as a house. It had carpet, insulation, electricity. That was Suburbia Studio. It was the nerve center of all our productions.
They're probably all have But here we are. We're going into Dave's studio here. Dave, is this your studio?
Yeah, this is where we do our pictures.
Is it?
Well, the old office. I drove by old Warnock Court, and it's I couldn't see the office, and David tells me it's gone now. But the office has a lot of special memories going back to when we were in 8th grade. So kind of started out as a place where we could hang out, and then it transformed itself into a sort of an editing room and radio studio, and a lot of nights out there saying, you know, what can we do next? I think we were fortunate to have that area. You know, those the office days are probably the most favorite days of my late teens, early 20s years. So it'll be a place I'll probably never forget, that's for sure.
We need to go get a line.
Yeah.
I gotta chew.
Damn.
No, David.
Sorry, son of a bitch.
What do we want to edit?
Put on this down jacket then.
If you spend any time in the office at all, you'll remember this drawing of the cover of Rhombus Monthly by Alan Hale, or this one of Star Blazers by Chris Freeland, or the cat sitting by the burned out apple. Those pictures hung on the walls of the office for years. I've been writing creatively since a very early age. I wrote my first novel at 10 in a little Mead notebook. It was called Shipwreck. In middle school, I won my first writing award, continued winning awards in high school and college. But in 1980, I became kind of bored with writing. It was such a solitary activity, and I wanted to be with other people and do something in a different medium. And radio drama seemed perfect. It was affordable. It didn't cost a lot of money to get the equipment. So in 1980, the first project we did in the studio was a parody on Star Wars based on the Mad magazine takeoff. And it was called The Empire Strikes Out. In this project, David Whitley's talents really came to the fore. I don't know how many different characters and voices he did.
Lord Zeta, Dark Master of the mystical energy field known as the Force. Imperial Bond Snoopers, feared soldiers of the Empire.
General Bluebonnet, strategist for the rebel forces. Creepio, one of Duke Steinfather's personal droids. Artie, Van Morty, senile old man, senile, who wrote this thing?
I must have known that July day Brian and I were starting something special because I wrote about it in my journal, and here we are 25 years later and 25 episodes later. Our series was inspired by Star Wars that National Public Radio had done in 13 episodes. The acting, the music blew me away, and I wanted to do my own radio series. And Captain Triangle is still going strong today.
The whole idea of Captain Triangle happened. We had this geometry teacher named Mr. Landers in high school, and one day we're walking down the stairs after class, and one of us said, you know, wouldn't it be funny if, like, Mr. Landers was like some geometric superhero at night, you know, and, like, you know, by day he's this, you know, geometry teacher, and at night he's out saving people. And basically we took that idea, and that summer David would come by and pick me up in the morning. We would go to his house and we would tape an episode, and it was really crude. We had this tape machine, and we'd sit by the speakers with the music or the sound effects playing, and we basically kind of winged it.
So, how have you been doing, Captain Triangle? How are the great geometric food gods?
I shall speak nothing. Call this wine.
Yes, isn't it lovely and vile and wicked and
Tastes
evil
like
and
liver
bad?
bile fluid.
Exactly.
For our next project, the same year, we tried improving our sound quality using a big reel-to-reel my brother had, and I adapted a short story I'd had published in the high school literary magazine. It was Chris Freeland's first project with us, and I remember he came into the backyard for the first time and came into the office, and he was in awe of the whole deal.
I remember I came over to David's house and he had all this stuff set up in his little shack outside his backyard. And I thought, what is this all about? Because he had like microphones and everyone was acting out these parts and stuff. It's where I first met Brian. And he was playing a part of this thing. And we weren't as adept at editing back then, and the pace was somewhat slower than I think a lot of people expected. I remember playing it for my mother and father, and there was so much space between one scene that my dad looked at me and raised eyebrows and went, "Is that it? Is it over?"
Alex, your boss just got here and paid the bond.
The bot? You mean I can go?
Yeah, as soon as you filled out a few forms.
Oh, where's my boss?
He's out front waiting for you. Seemed kind of nervous.
We did another radio drama, this time utilizing material from one of my favorite authors, Flannery O'Connor, and her short story, A Good Man Is Hard to Find.